2:14 a.m. The southern choke point of the Strait of Hormuz is pitch black, but the sky has just been violently ripped apart by a blinding cascade of shattered fiberglass, burning fuel, and pulverized Iranian pride raining into the dark waters. Seconds ago, Tehran's generals were practically high-fiving in their bunkers, convinced their swarm of 76 kamikaze drones would turn a United States carrier strike group and its 5,000 American sailors into a burning wreckage right before the State of the Union. But folks, here is the lethal error they made. If you send cheap plastic drones to overwhelm a multi-billion-dollar Aegis grid, then you better pray the Americans panic and fire their $2 million interceptors. Stay focused, because the next 3 minutes is a masterclass in military economics that left the Iranian Guard completely humiliated, watching their ultimate revenge transform into a spectacular fireworks show of their own destruction. Deep inside a reinforced bunker beneath Tehran, the Iranian Guard was busy popping imaginary champagne bottles to avenge the devastating airstrikes that American and Israeli stealth fighters had just rained down on their facilities hours prior. Their bruised egos desperately needed a PR victory, unleashing what they arrogantly believed was an unstoppable swarm. 76 Shahed, 136 and Mohajer, 6 suicide drones launched in a synchronized death wave, buzzing blindly along pre-programmed GPS coordinates like a mindless zombie horde, while a pack of Bagamar fast attack boats throttled into the dark waters to act as a distraction. The Iranian commanders stared at their glowing screens, absolutely convinced this swarm would force the US Navy to either absorb catastrophic hull damage or bleed out billions of dollars in defense missiles. But here is the genius detail that only true tactical minds will recognize. Most people see a terrifying swarm closing in for the kill. But those keyboard commanders in Tehran forgot one crucial detail about American naval engineering. We never play fair, and we certainly don't pay retail to take out the trash. If you ask why the combat alarms on the guided missile destroyer USS Arleigh Burke weren't screaming in a frantic frenzy, I'll tell you an unbelievable military secret. At 30,000 feet above this mechanical swarm, an E-2D Advanced Hawkeye was already loitering in the freezing night air, acting as an omnipotent brain for the entire carrier strike group. Its AN/SPY-1 radar system wasn't just tracking the 76 incoming fiberglass toys, it was instantly downloading their exact flight paths into the Aegis Combat System Baseline 9 network, dissecting the entire Iranian strategy into raw, pathetic data points in 0.02 seconds. The Americans weren't scrambling to launch $2.5 million SM-2 missiles to swat down a cheap moped engine strapped to some explosive putty. Stay with me, because the physics of destruction in the next 30 seconds is about to change the map of the Strait of Hormuz forever. The clock is relentlessly ticking down as the black swarm of 76 Shahed and Mohajer kamikaze drones crosses the 5-mile death threshold, their cheap lawnmower engines buzzing like a plague of mechanical locusts against the dark ocean winds. Inside the Combat Information Center of the Arleigh Burke, the glowing tactical displays paint a terrifying mathematical reality that goes far beyond simple survival. If you were the commander of this billion-dollar warship, staring at a radar screen filled with hostile red diamonds, what would your next move be? Would you panic and hit the big red button to unleash a storm of RIM-162 evolved Sea Sparrow missiles? Or would you trust a radically different kind of warfare? Here is the brutal economic trap that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps thought they had perfectly sprung. Each of those incoming kamikaze drones costs a laughable $20,000 to $50,000 to assemble in a dusty underground warehouse, basically the price of a used civilian car, while a single standard United States Navy interceptor missile demands a staggering price tag of over $2 million. If the American captain ordered a traditional surface-to-air defense sequence, launching 2 missiles per target to ensure absolute destruction, the United States Navy would instantly burn through hundreds of millions of dollars of premium taxpayer ordnance just to swat down a flying scrapyard. It is a meticulously calculated war of financial attrition, a deliberate attempt by Tehran to bleed the American arsenal dry and humiliate the greatest naval power on Earth by forcing them to empty their vertical launch systems against literal flying garbage. The tension inside the CIC is thick enough to cut with a combat knife as the automated firing solutions lock onto the incoming targets. But the American captain doesn't flinch because he knows that firing a $2 million golden bullet at a plastic trash can is exactly what the enemy desperately wants. The Iranian generals are banking entirely on the traditional American doctrine of overwhelming firepower, aggressively hoping to drain the destroyer's magazine so their follow-up waves of fast attack boats can strike a defenseless fleet. But only those with a razor-sharp strategic mind will realize that the United States military did not spend decades dominating the global oceans just to get financially outsmarted by a glorified radio-controlled airplane. Club. Stay tuned, because the American response to this economic hostage situation is a masterclass in asymmetrical dominance that the Iranian engineers never even imagined in their wildest, most optimistic nightmares. Back in the sweltering underground command bunkers scattered along the Iranian coastline, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officers were already passing around glasses of sweet tea and practically throwing a victory parade. Their eyes greedily locked onto the outdated tracking monitors showing the massive drone swarm closing in on the American fleet. They were absolutely drunk on their own localized propaganda, thoroughly convinced that they had just checkmated the United States Navy in a spectacular display of asymmetric genius that would be taught in military academies for decades. The sheer arrogance radiating from Tehran's high command was so blindingly intoxicating, prompting them to prematurely deploy their supposed apex predators of the Persian Gulf, a sprawling pack of Boghammer and Zulfahar fast attack boats roaring out of their hidden coves and slicing across the black waves at over 40 knots to join the incoming slaughter. The Iranian sailors gripping the heavy machine guns on the decks of these glorified fiberglass speedboats were literally cheering into the salty ocean wind, fully believing that the American guided missile destroyer was frantically emptying its multi-million-dollar vertical launch magazines at the overhead drone swarm and would soon be completely defenseless against a coordinated naval ambush. It is a terrifyingly pathetic level of hubris when a military force mistakes American tactical patience for sheer panic, confusing the deafening silence of a billion-dollar warship for a helpless, disorganized surrender. Most ordinary viewers watching this unfolding disaster would instinctively assume that the United States sailors were sweating bullets as the 76 Shahed drones confidently crossed the point of no return. But if you belong to the elite group that deeply understands how modern naval warfare actually operates, you already know that the American captain wasn't trembling in fear. He was simply waiting for the arrogant prey to step fully into the technological slaughterhouse. Stay focused, because the second act of this explosive torch party was just getting started, and the Iranian commanders were about to experience a historically brutal wake-up call that would inevitably shatter their entire naval doctrine into a million burning pieces. Just as the lead Shahed 136 drones breached the final perimeter, fully expecting to be greeted by a desperate wall of multi-million-dollar interceptors, the United States Navy unleashes a technological nightmare. But here is the lethal error the Revolutionary Guard planners missed when calculating their swarm tactics. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer doesn't rely solely on expensive kinetic missiles to defend itself against cheap flying plastic. It has a hidden ace up its sleeve that costs literally pennies per shot. Mounted high on the superstructure, the optical dazzling interdictor Navy, known as the ODIN laser system, silently powers up and paints the incoming formation with an invisible beam of concentrated, high-energy light. In a fraction of a second, the blinding optical energy fries the electro-optical sensors and navigation nodes of the leading drones, turning the supposed apex predators into blind, disoriented junk spiraling uselessly towards the ocean. But folks, here is the lethal twist that makes this engagement an absolute masterclass in military economics. While the laser is silently blinding the Vanguard, a heavily armed MH-60R Seahawk helicopter, already loitering in the pitch-black sky above, suddenly drops its nose to deliver the ultimate financial insult. The pilot isn't firing expensive Hellfire missiles. He is rippling off a barrage of advanced precision kill weapon system rockets, the legendary APKWS. These are unguided Hydra 70 rockets, brilliantly retrofitted with cheap laser guidance kits, transforming them into deadly precision munitions for a laughable $30,000 apiece. If you are tracking the return on investment, the Americans just neutralized a massive, heavily hyped suicide swarm using light beams and budget-friendly rockets, shattering the enemy's $400 million dream while keeping the destroyer's main magazines completely full. Stay tuned, because the true slaughter is just seconds away. The sky over the Strait of Hormuz is now a chaotic graveyard of burning fiberglass, but the real humiliation for Tehran is just getting started. For the ordinary viewer, the sight of a few surviving Shahed drones slipping past the initial laser net might look like a successful breach. But those with a sharp tactical mind know exactly what happens next. The USS Arleigh Burke doesn't even flinch before unleashing the legendary Phalanx close-in weapon system, a fully automated rotary cannon that instantly fills the pitch-black sky with a deafening mechanical roar. Pumping out thousands of armor-piercing tungsten rounds per minute, the Phalanx acts like a giant, unyielding chainsaw, violently shredding the remaining plastic drones into a million flaming confetti pieces before their pathetic navigation computers can even register the impact. But wait. There is one more layer to this spectacular triple-threat failure that the Iranian fast attack boats blindly accelerated right into. While the Bog Hummer crews are still aggressively throttling forward, totally convinced they are about to ambush a defenseless American destroyer, the ship's massive Mk-45 5-inch gun suddenly rotates in the darkness. It violently barks a thunderous concussion across the freezing water, hurling high-explosive fragmentation shells over 10 miles away to perfectly airburst directly above the incoming Iranian speedboats. The massive shockwave and a lethal cloud of razor-sharp shrapnel instantly vaporize the cheap fiberglass hulls, turning the arrogant Revolutionary Guard sailors into a chaotic mess of absolute defeat. Stay with me, because the final move isn't just a warning shot, it is a brutally precise cleanup operation. Roaring down from the stratosphere, a pair of FA-18 Super Hornets arrive to deliver the ultimate financial crushing blow. Locking onto the fleeing remnants of the speedboat pack, the American pilots casually pickle off AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and AIM-9X Sidewinders, obliterating the stragglers in a series of blinding, waterborne explosions that echo for miles. The Iranian command bunkers are suddenly dead silent, staring at completely blank radar screens as their entire hyped-up fleet of revenge is wiped off the map in under 3 minutes. When the blinding flashes of the exploding Hellfire missiles finally fade and the thick smoke of incinerated Iranian fiberglass settles over the Strait of Hormuz, the sheer scale of the American strategic checkmate becomes undeniably clear. The sprawling United States Carrier Strike Group, carrying over 5,000 sailors and dozens of multi-billion-dollar aircraft, continues its nighttime patrol through the vital shipping lanes without a single scratch on its pristine gray hull. All those breathless promises from Tehran's top brass about turning the Persian Gulf into a fiery graveyard have miraculously evaporated into nothing more than an embarrassing stain of oil and floating debris drifting in the dark. Currents. But here is the most humiliating twist of the knife for the Iranian generals sitting in absolute stunned silence inside their underground bunkers. They didn't just lose their entire 76-drone kamikaze swarm and a pack of heavily hyped fast attack boats in under 3 minutes. They catastrophically failed their primary economic objective. If you peek inside the vertical launch magazines of the USS Arleigh Burke right now, you won't find empty canisters smelling of spent rocket fuel. Instead, those expensive tubes are still perfectly packed to the brim with pristine SM-2 and Tomahawk cruise missiles. The American forces just casually swatted down Iran's ultimate revenge package using spare change and laser beams, leaving their heavy-hitting arsenal completely untouched. Only the deepest strategic thinkers will realize the terrifying implication of a fully armed U.S. warship surviving an ambush without breaking a sweat. Stay tuned, because the American response to this failed ambush isn't just a defensive victory, it is a terrifying intelligence goldmine. The real nightmare for the IRGC is just beginning. While the drones burned, the E-2D Hawkeye secretly traced every single telemetry signal straight back to their hidden underground launch sites. The Americans now possess the exact GPS coordinates of Tehran's secret bunkers, and those untouched Tomahawk missiles are practically begging to be unleashed. If you were the US commander tomorrow morning, do you launch the Tomahawks or let them sweat in fear? Tell me your Grandmaster move below.